Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Akim Akunju. I'm the chair of the CIBSE County Southwest region. Thank you all for taking the time out this afternoon to join the CIBSE County Southwest region and the Society of Light and Lighting on our joint webinar titled Delivering the Circular Economy in the Lighting Industry. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be sent out to the attendees after the presentation. Today, we have 4 distinguished guest speakers who will be presenting to us. Our first speaker will be Bob Bohannon, who is a fellow of the Society of Light and Lighting, a member of the Institute of Engineering and Technology, and the current president of the Society of Light and Lighting. And he is also the director of Rapid. Our second speaker is Kristina, Allison. She is a chartered engineer, a member of CIBSE, a senior lighting designer at Atkins, and the chair of the Society of Light and Lighting Education Committee. Our third speaker is Roger Sexton, who is the fellow of Society of Light and Lighting, responsible for business development at Stone Lighting, with over 30 decades of experience in lighting industry. He is also a member of the International Council of Museums and interfaces with several universities and participates in industry-wide research. Our fourth speaker, but not the last, is Tim Bowes, who is the Vice Chair of the Lighting Industry Association Technical Committee, the Head of Lighting Application for Whitecroft Lighting, who comes with over 18 years experience in the lighting industry. We will have questions and answers section at the end of the presentation, and this will be chaired by our very own David Mooney, who is a fellow of Society of Light and Lighting, a member of CIBSE, the principal lighting designer and lead of the specialist architectural lighting group at Atkins. So without further ado, I hand over to Bob, who will take us through today's presentation. If you're not presenting, please ensure that your videos are off, and please ensure that your mics are also muted. All questions should be directed via the chat. Thank you very much. Bob, over to you.
Thank you very much, Hakeem. I'm Bob Bohannon.
And I'm Kristina, Allison.
As Hakeem said, Kristina and I are starting our presentation today with a background to the circular economy. We will then explain the ideas behind the draft circular economy assessment method that the SLL is potentially introducing. Following this, Roger and Tim will be talking about the circular economy in action with policies, projects, products, and accreditation, all examples of what is in place right now. And then we're going to end with a Q&A session to the whole panel. We're seeking comments specifically on the draft circular economy assessment method, but also on the wider topic. So as Hakeem kindly said, please use the chat function, and David's going to be chairing that session.
I want to start this presentation with a quote from Craig Bennett, the Chief Executive of the Wildlife Trust. The economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of nature, not the other way around.
This on screen is the way we do it now. A linear economy of take, make, waste. We take the resources from the earth, make and use products, and when we've used them, we throw them and a lot of their embodied and resources energy away. It only has 2 problems. One, it assumes we have infinite resources to extract, and 2, it assumes we can throw stuff away with no consequences, and that the earth has infinite regenerative power.
We do this because this is what we've been doing for the last 200 years, because resources really did seem infinite. Importantly, we do it because we don't account any of our environmental damage. Without addressing that side of the balance sheet, it seemed the cheapest way to get and to make stuff generally.
Coronavirus has given many of us a chance to reevaluate what is important. Clear skies or cheap air travel, quiet streets, clean air, and the sound of birdsong, or the freedom to drive anywhere and anywhere we like. The COVID-19 lockdown in April temporarily cut CO2 emissions, but has also triggered huge economic contraction. And that contraction may be worsened by the second lockdown we're now experiencing. Some governments are calling to harness their economic recovery to plans to boost the low carbon design and technology. They call this Build Back Better.
But how is this going to be implemented?
Well, let's have a look at what better looks like in terms of lighting. DPA coined the term the right light in the right place at the right time. We're pondering whether this should now be more nuanced. Our call is for minimum energy, minimum resource, and maximum comfort. Minimum energy, because we will most likely be facing pressures to minimize energy consumption to enable net carbon zero buildings. Minimum resource, we are facing government policy to double resource efficiency by 2050. And indeed, legislation requiring some circular economy principles comes into force next year. And maximum comfort, we are increasingly understanding the role lighting plays in health, performance, and interest.
Today's webinar focuses on how to minimise that resource use by applying circular economy principles into our work, causing a paradigm shift in the way that we think and work.
It seems to us that to apply circular economy, you've got 4 options. 1, do nothing. Well, if you're a manufacturer, your products won't be compliant with single lighting regulations soon. 2, do only one thing. Well, that first thing is the ability to repair fittings by making drivers and PCBs replaceable. It's a significant step, but is that all? Has it been thought through? 3, well, try and do everything. Well, that's brilliant. And if you fully know how to do it, then we'd love you to join us in delivering in the next webinar. But it's super complicated, slide will show. So that leaves us with 4, which is do the most effective thing. This is what this webinar is all about, how to make good progress in a simple and effective way.
If you get deeply into the circular economy, then the analysis gets very deep and very quickly. We're not knocking this. This will become widespread, and environmental auditing may become almost as common as economic auditing. In fact, Chancellor Rishi Sunak has recently called for this. But for the average electrical or lighting engineer, design consultant, or even manufacturers, this is quite a task for them to take on.
To give an example of just how complex just 1 or 2 of these approaches is some definitions of these analysis techniques. Let's look at industrial ecology. It's the study of materials and energy flows through industrial systems. Okay, maybe not that bad. But you soon get into some very complicated flowcharts and some 3-dimensional Excel sheets. Socio-economic metabolism approach. Well, that takes everything you had on industrial ecology and adds to it to including nature, society, and the links between societies. So let's stop. These are hugely important and very laudable. But as yet, maybe you can't realistically do them every time you compare between 2 different manufacturers, 600 by 600 LED panels. So let's see what we can do.
Sustainability currently consists of 99% of cost savings and 1% environmental. A focus on energy efficiency has distracted our industry from original goals and impact on the environment.
Over the last 5 to 10 years, much of our industry has embraced a laser focused on luminaire efficiency and the return on investment of replacing legacy light sources with LED. Lower prices improve ROI. This and the design and build procurement method drove down prices. The benefit was that the lighting sector of the building services has delivered huge reductions in emitted CO2, but there were costs. Importing a lowest possible cost 30,000 an hour, 600 by 600 panel, LED panel without any serviceable components on a container ship from the other side of the world
which burns high sulfur content bunker fuel, spewing sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, particulates, is maybe not the most environmentally sound way of delivering light. But we have hope, so let's look at our direction of travel. Pollution control and cleaner production is the basic stuff required by law. It is the restriction of hazardous substances and REACH, and the manufacturers have got this. Well, I hope they do. This determines how they are making new products now. Eco-efficiency are requirements of Part L of the building regulations and the EU's energy using products directive. The eco-innovation response to that was the move to LEDs.
So looking at the chart, you can kind of see where we are now. We've made huge strides in efficiency of products in use, but legislation and the more forward-thinking clients and specifiers are moving beyond this to life cycle thinking. This is where circular economy comes in. From the eco-efficiency of the product in use and how much electricity it uses, we need to move to an understanding of the resource used in making shipping product, then the end of life. This is life cycle thinking. Circular economy is not just recycling. That's important to understand. It is closing the loop, keeping products not as products, keeping them in use, upgrading them, not letting them become low value waste. It is viewing waste as a resource, and it's all about design and creating partnerships.
Let's start the circular economy at the beginning. Ellen MacArthur, she's a hero of our hour, not just for realizing why circular thinking is important, but in doing something about it. She broke the world record of the fastest solo circumnavigation of the globe in 2005 in just under 71 days. The day after, she was made Dame Commander of the British Empire, the youngest person ever to receive that award.
Ellen's voyage took, as Kristina said, just over 71 days. Prior to setting out from Falmouth in Cornwall, she had to load all the food, supplies, and equipment she needed to complete the round-the-world race. There would be no stopping for supplies. On the voyage, I'm pretty sure she was pretty busy at times, but she realized the connection between her boat on the ocean and planet Earth. Both only had one set of resources to be used wisely and with care. A profligate take, make, waste, buy some more model doesn't work in the constricted space inside a racing yacht, nor does it work on our crowded planet. On her return, she created the Ellen MacArthur Foundation to inform, inspire, and enable the setting to work of circular economy ideas. She is our hero.
You remember the linear slide, the linear model from earlier on in this presentation, the take, make, waste model? Is this the solution? Instead of take, waste, and make and waste, we move to make, use, and recycle.
Make, use, recycle sounds really attractive. It's pretty much what we do. We have our wheelie bins. But it has a problem. If linear means we throw stuff away pretty quickly, then make, use, recycle, well, all it really does is slow down the point stuff gets thrown away. To misquote the James Bond movie, the we is not enough. Just because your light fittings have a crossed out wheelie bin logo, and just because the manufacturers are, they're paying their dues on waste electrical and electronic equipment directive, doesn't mean they'll be recycled into another high value light fitting. No. When they're recycled, they'll likely be shredded at an approved authorized treatment facility. Your high value luminaire will at best become low value recovered raw materials. Make, use, recycle just uses recycling to validate waste. It takes the problem off your hands, but it doesn't fix the problem.
This is a much truer circular economy. make, use, return. Here are light fittings, luminaires, go back to the manufacturer, either to be refurbished or ungraded or remanufactured as more light fittings. At worst, it will be a component of recovery. Value is often thought to be the amount of money that can be received for something, like these value range baked beans, for example. Value currently is too frequently the capital cost of the luminaire versus the energy consumption of the system. It is a simple return on investment calculation.
Or is it the importance, worth, or usefulness of something? Most importantly, when you're designing a lighting scheme, when did you last hear someone ask, what is the end user's lighting objectives? How does light better enable their organization, be it a school, office, hospital, shop, to meet their objectives? If they don't know this, or if we haven't explained it to them, then our lighting has little perceived value. But that's for another webinar. Our luminaire has a value when it's doing its job. If on failure or obsolescence, we simply shred it, it loses its value. Many of you right now listening to this webinar will be working from home, and you might well have a task light on your desk. It's useful, yeah, so it has a value. Throw that light fitting, that task light in the recycling bin, and it now almost has no value at all. All the embodied energy and resource that went into manufacturing and shipping are lost.
This drives this diagram. If you look at the left-hand side, you have the take, make, waste linear model as before. For the eco-innovation that where a fitting has failed, or maybe the space has changed in its use and type, and can anyone think of any likely possibility of this happening to offices post-COVID? The fitting needs to change. We keep it as its highest value, economic value and functional value for as long as possible. So don't shred a failed fitting, fix it. The right to repair and the ability to repair fittings easily on site is on its way under the new single lighting regulation. So a fitting stays as fittings, luminaires, it retains its value.
If it's no longer fit for use in the space, it can be returned for remanufacture, upgrade, modification, reuse somewhere else. The fitting stays a fitting, or it becomes a new fitting, but retaining as much value from the old as possible. You can quickly see here that modular fittings, materials, finishes, construction choices become critical to success. After this, if it has little life left in its present form, then we can harvest reusable parts, component recovery. Only after this do we recycle the raw materials.
Product designer Victor Papanak said, there are professionals more harmful than industrial design, but only a few.
But design is the solution in the circular economy. We need product design, services design, reverse logistics, ecosystems, platforms to drive the reuse of fittings. There's a huge amount of work going on in design of fittings, and there's a huge amount of work still to do to design these services and people and companies to deliver this economy.
Victor Papanak famously wrote Design for the Real World in 1971. I'll quote, our current economic model of take, make, waste is not sustainable. A switch to the circular economy is a key weapon in the fight against climate change. It will allow us to extend the use of materials and avoid destroying resources, unlocking economic value. But the move to the circular economy is now a real world. Eric Rondelat, CEO of Signify, of Philips, said in 2019, the quote I've just mentioned there.
And Signify are not finished. Eric Rondelat, their CEO, was last week awarded Lux Person of the Year because of their move towards circular economy. he's still moving down the circular economy route. So in this year, he said, for 2025, we have a new commitment to double our positive impact to create brighter lives and better world. We'll double our percentage of circular revenues with products that can be reused, refurbished, or recycled. So it's happening.
But to apply all of this to our day-to-day jobs, be they manufacturing, design, or as commissioning clients, we need the information to make these decisions. As we said earlier, it's as important and can be complex, and it can be open to greenwash potentially as well. So we started writing the Society of Light and Lighting Circular Economy Factfile. We've explained the basic principles so far, and we outlined the drivers to the circular economy.
And in that fact file, we started making a checklist of the considerations required: product features, support systems, knowledge and questions. We did this sector by sector, from manufacturers to engineers and designers and end users. We consulted widely. In fact, we still are. And this webinar today is part of that consultation. In the Q&A, we want to hear your views. We want your comments. I really must say, this is draft. It says on the left, warning, people still at work. This is a team effort. We're still drafting. We're still changing the document. It's not finished.
One of the comments back from our earlier consultation was from Director of BDP Lighting, Mark Riddler. He said, as a specifier, we need to check lists that you can tick or mark a number, and so that minimum standard can be negotiated with the client and then defended in equal and approved scenarios. It will be excellent if this paper could agree for the general adoption of consultants. It should be revised by industry as the industry improves.
So we listened. We're changing the checklist into the Society of Light and Lighting Circular Economy Assessment Method, or CIAM for short. Maybe that's the natural follow-on to BREEAM.
We've had quite a few discussions on benchmarking during our journey so far. First thinking of a -5 to +5 rating, which we then simplified to a negative, positive, or neutral, or red, amber, green type of system, if you like. But we now think that a more positive view is a 0 to a +5 rating, for example. On our assessment method, the 0 rating of a product or feature is a status quo. So that's our now position, we're thinking. A luminaire with no design features supporting services that are needed to deliver the circular economy. So 0 equals no evidence, a +1 indicates some positive evidence, +2 indicates positive evidence, more than just some, +3 excellent evidence, escalating the amount of evidence and quality of evidence ascending from the benchmark, as I mentioned before, and +4 outstanding. Outstanding, this realistically is quite a long way away from where we are currently now. And this is where products are not just merely circular, but causing little or no impact, but truly are regenerative restoring of natural systems. You can see this on the screen here as an example.
The plan is for the assessment method to be split into 4 main sections, covering product designers, manufacturing, materials, and ecosystems, each split into a number of separate criteria. For example, some of the criteria in product design are shown on screen. So these could be repairability, durability, fixing techniques, meaning do we want to glue multiple material types together, which you can't get apart, or use screws? Resilience to digital obsolescence. We all know in our daily lives, quite a few of our products end life, not because they are not, they've broken, but because the supporting digital services don't work anymore. We will give examples of good practice at the 4 scoring levels and explain each criteria's impact on the circular economy. Now, one of the challenges facing us and everybody is greenwash and the lack of information. I'm going to be a bit cheeky, but you might want to ask your sales representative next time they come in, on the recyclability of their luminaire, and you might get a nervous pause, followed by a relieved smile when they say, but it's made of aluminium, and aluminium can be recycled, can't it? So it's good for the planet. But our questions are going to go deeper than that. We're going to say, okay, is your fitting made of aluminium? Is it made of recycled aluminium? What's the percentage? At end of life, will it be taken back? Will it be upgraded into another fitting? And another challenge is that some parts of the circular economy have not been designed yet, principally the ecosystems of services that will support it. We all know about logistics, getting our shiny new 600 by 600 LED panel from Guangzhou to Glasgow via ship, truck and installer. But have you heard of reverse logistics, where they go back and pick it up again for repair, reuse, upgrade, component recovery? How do we do that? Warranties may have to change, so might labeling. Lots of features, systems, services, platforms have yet to be designed or come into effect. Our assessment method is just the first version. It will grow and change as we learn and as the market grows and changes.
So, if our work is proven to be effective, it will both inform, enable, and motivate manufacturers to go from zero to hero, with product features and eventually full products with supporting ecosystems that achieve CIAM4 outstanding ratings. That'd be amazing. The ultimate goal of the assessment is to provide a tool or guide for designers in specifying those circular economy products we've been speaking of, making meaningful decisions in product selections, making our designs even better than they will be.
Talking of hero, we now have two companies who are already living the circular economy dream. First up, I invite Roger Sexton of Stone Lighting to turn his microphone on and his camera on. And Roger, please just ask Kristina to swap slides as you need them. Roger.
Thank you very much, Bob, and it's a pleasure for me to contribute to this webinar, which I'll do with about half a dozen slides for my slot, and in them I'll cover Stone Lighting's approach to the circular economy, which should illustrate some of the themes that Bob and Kristina have introduced. Next slide, please, Kristina. So let's start with material efficiency. How can we keep a luminaire in use for a long time? Let's say not 10 years, but 20 or 25. Well, with this sort of lifespan, it will have both product and service implications. And with this slide, I make a start looking at the product. And as Bob said, it needs attention to circular economy principles in the design. This means flexibility in the design built in. For example, being able to get at all the components first and foremost, having multiple fixing holes, as you can see from the extrusion in the picture, having ample leeway with mechanical space and thermals. And it's all of these considerations that mean it will be possible, for example, to accommodate different LED module types to an original, which may have been delisted, or to upgrade to a new type altogether. It means using components made in-house or locally sourced, so they will always be obtainable. You see, with these types of considerations, they allow for a repair to the original specification or allow for an upgrade with, let's say, new light qualities or different beam widths or different control options or different mounting methodologies. As you see in this picture, it should be possible to change a surface mount to a track adapter. For example, this may be required if the lighting handbook changes in a shop rebrand. And next slide, please, Kristina. Now, for the circular economy to be effective, the flexible product design, which I've just discussed, must be matched with a repair service. So let's broach this aspect. The norm is a factory return, but what if this is impossible? Well, Stone Lighting's approach has been to make a mobile workshop which can travel to an end user where downtime is an issue, with a suite of luminaires to swap over temporarily. They make the necessary repairs in the mobile workshop and swap them back again. These type of CE activities, circular economy activities, by the way, along with social policies like localization, form the core part of what's necessary to achieve B Corp status. This is the accreditation route that we have gone down, and as you can see by the logo bottom left, we're at the verification stage. So let's move from these conceptual flowcharts to a couple of real life examples. Next slide, please. Firstly, a repair job. This is ongoing, actually, it's only just started. The photograph is of Hereford Cathedral, and in the inset you see one of the track spots is undergoing a general repair with new LEDs, drivers, a deep clean, electrical safety checks, this sort of thing. Next slide. And now from a repair to an upgrade. And this second example shows the Van Gogh Museum, where 200 or 300 track spots were recently upgraded to add luminaire-based wireless control, which was then linked to sensors for daylight harvesting, or also lux exposure monitoring for preservation reasons. And if you look at the inset, it's this is the track spot. You see it here dismantled, and the constant current driver was swapped out for a 48-volt DC power supply, and the LED module with a smart version which included a low voltage driver and a BLE chipset. The fixture was designed with this need in mind, so the complete upgrade took about 5 minutes per fitting. Then reseal, retest, reset the warranty. Next slide, please. So I end with the most extreme example I could think of. This picture shows one of the really magnificent Waterford crystal chandeliers in Westminster Abbey. And to upgrade this was a tough challenge, but it was possible because the original very sound base build had been made with future interventions in mind. The old lamps were unavailable. The second generation lamps were hard to control. This was relevant because the client asked for a new control feature, that of dynamic CCT. And how on earth can we do it? Moving them is unthinkable. Can you imagine taking them down and moving them to Edinburgh? So the service was completely done on site in the Abbey, thanks to the circular economy principles in the design. The conversion was completed at the end of last year, I think, and in the end, 56 tunable LED modules in each of the 16 chandeliers. Well, I stop with this rousing finale and hand the baton over to Tim.
So for our second circular economy hero of the afternoon, we've got Tim Bowes. Tim's head of lighting application at Whitecroft Lighting. Tim, across to you, and please ask Kristina to change your slides.
Great, thank you very much, Bob. Thank you, Kristina. Thank you, everybody, and good afternoon. So yeah, Kristina, if you go to the next slide, please. So for us, we started about 18 months or 2 years ago working on a project where the client wanted to regenerate the existing lighting, focusing on the circular economic principles that Kristina and Bob have already touched on today. And we worked with our specials team internally and the FM team on site to deliver an outcome of a project that we delivered for the lighting controls. And what we looked at ensuring was that first and foremost, the improvement in the lit environment and the function of the space for the employees. We looked at by delivering innovation around design and maintaining existing products. We saved 2 tons of raw material through this upgrade around the materials and the products that we had today by upgrading from T5 to LED. We saved 1.5 tons of packaging through using our EcoCrate system. And on top of that, we then ensured the responsible disposal of recycled materials where appropriate from site. We deliver the energy reductions requirements for the project through a combination of LED technology, lighting controls, and at the appropriate cost point for the project to deliver the return on investment that the client wanted to deliver, taking on board these circular principles. And I guess what this project did for us as a business is it helped us to start appreciating the positive environmental, economic and social impact needs of sustainable design that circular economy can have on the solutions we develop going forward with new developments, as well as potentially doing the refurb elements of what we do. We realised that as a manufacturer of lighting, we had to start to look at the wider impact of our solutions away from simply discussing energy consumption through life. Now, yes, clearly this is still important, and we cannot lose sight of that through low energy lighting and control systems. But it did refocus us in understanding that we have to deliver products that consider the environmental impact as a manufacturer on the total life of the project and the product. So from this, we developed Whitecroft Vitality. This is our circular address, look at the design, manufacture, through life utility and regeneration and reuse of products from Whitecroft and into the market. And that's the diagram you see there. I'm going to focus today looking at the design manufacture elements of what we're doing, just partly because of time. But what we wanted to do and how we wanted to tackle this from design manufacturers, we wanted to look at delivering solutions that looked at industry benchmarks on circular design. So we didn't want to just be our view on circular. We wanted to follow best practice principles. And we wanted to achieve independent accreditation to give validity to what we are doing. I think as Bob, Kristina and Roger all mentioned, there's several accreditation systems out there. And what I'm going to just present to you briefly now is the cradle-to-cradle approach that we took working with the customer on the refurb project recommended option around that. So Kristina, if you just go to the next slide, I'll just quickly go through the cradle-to-cradle approach. So cradle-to-cradle is the Cradle Products Innovation Institute is an internationally recognised group setting standards for products that are safe and follow circular principles. It's included in some guidance documents you see below. There's the WELL standard, LEED, particularly around material health. More recently, there's been some press around the climate pledge-friendly products released by Amazon in Europe, in America, and I think in the last couple of weeks they started bringing it into Europe using cradle-to-cradle products as an approach. So how does it work? How do we take this and design products? So it provides guidance for the design manufacture of products around those 5 different categories you can see there. So based on that set of criteria, it provides a bronze, silver, gold or platinum rating against each of those categories. And the product rating that you get for that product is the lowest score from those 5 categories. And the reason we like this accreditation, and we thought it's important to go in this route, is it delivers transparency of products and the circular credentials through independent assessments. It gives clear guidance about how to improve our products and processes to be more circular and sustainable. And the CCT accreditation also only gives 2 years of validity. And if you don't show improvement through that, after that 2 years, they will remove the accreditation. So for us, it helps drive us to be continually improvement in our product development and production. I think as we learn about circular design principles and philosophy and the way it's going to be implemented, that's really important to make sure we continue to develop our products. So just briefly to go what those five credits are looking at, or those 5 areas are looking at. So material health, they published a list of banned materials where they limit the parts per million that you can use within a product. And then they drill down further, look at the chemical and material elements and assess how the environmental and health impact can be from those products. For the reutilization, they're looking at how products and materials can be reused, upgraded and repurposed in a clear and ambiguous way. I think that taps into the hierarchy of reuse that Kristina showed before with that model there about where you tap into and how you use that product again. For the energy, they look at the percentage of renewable energy used, and also the carbon offset for direct on-site emissions is put in place from us as a manufacturer. And then for the social category, they look at how we as a business support the local community, and also importantly, how our supply chain and how they operate as well. So it drives through the whole business and through the whole solution. And then finally, the water stewardship puts in place the guidance for a natural resource that is important for us. Water is a key part of life, both for us as humans and as people, but also for the environment as well. And then make sure they're reducing and understanding what waste you're providing, and then reducing the contamination effluent from the site. And like I said, they take those 5 categories, then give you that rating. So what does it look like from a product point of view? So Kristina, if you just go to the next slide for me, please. So this is Cascade Flex. This is our first cradle-to-cradle accredited lighting solution that we put into the market. It was launched, I think, in June, July, and we've also since launched Flight Vitality, which is the high bay product, which is our second product will be launched in September of this year. And going forward, all Whitecroft product development will consider sustainable use of materials, future regeneration, and offer a cradle-to-cradle accredited version where appropriate to meet client motivations and aspirations. So what have we done with Cascade Flex and Cascade Flex Vitality to deliver that? So we looked at responsible sourcing of materials. I think touching what Roger mentioned before, we've looked at our supply chain, how they operate, their values, and also importantly where they're based by sourcing as local to Whitecroft as we can within Greater Manchester. And if this incurs a cost, we feel it's important to deliver this and to support that supply chain in the local economy. We're continually looking to reducing the amount of materials we use in our products. So, for example, the Cascade Flex, when you compare it against a standard flat panel product, we've reduced the amount of plastic used in that product by 70%, reducing the environmental impact of both the production of materials and then potential waste in the future. Although the waste design of the cartridge, enables that regeneration. We work with our supply chain to reduce and remove any of the banned materials from our components. We're by far we've got a long way still to go to do that, to drive it further through on the accreditation list from cradle to cradle, but we're certainly in the right direction, and it enables us to get greater transparency for the future and enable us to see where we need to work with our supply chain to drive that forward. The removable cartridge element, which is the central section you can see there in the image, allows for simple upgrade, maintenance, and future use of the fitting and materials for a closed loop or an open loop system. The product has no towed access. There's no glues, there's no screws using the product construction, and also we consider things like not using snap fixings, which can break and make a component redundant. Instead, using a lock-in mechanism for integrating the lighting elements into the body. The material passport point of view, what this does, each product comes with a QR code, which gives access to the material passport of a product. That information contained in there is held on an independent website where we published a list of materials within the product by weight to support the end-of-life position, whether that's to repurpose or recycle the product down the line, and again enable us to understand the environmental impact of our products. And then in addition, what that material passport potentially enables us to do going forward is potentially provide a list of spare parts, as well as potential access to data such as the LDT file, BIM files, or any performance data going forward into the future that enables the reuse of that product into the future. So where we ended up with Cascade Flex Vitality. So we have bronze accreditation. Some of the elements we have within those 5 criteria are at gold, but as I mentioned before, the lowest value is what you get, and we've got bronze. But I think importantly for us, as a starting point, it's address what we know we need to do to try and bring both this product up to silver or gold across the overall rating, but also into future product developments that we do going forward. So, just to conclude, we're certainly early on in our circular journey, but we think through engagement, discussion, feedback, we've had for the last few months, some people involved with today's presentation. We spoke to, we understand the important development of this area of the built environment is becoming clearer for us. And I thank you for your time, and I'll pass you back to Bob and Kristina.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. That was just brilliant. And it shows both Tim and Roger shows the depth of thought needed, and innovation and work to create real circular economy fittings. To end, we must be clear to the skeptical that we're not being knit your own muesli tree huggers here. We're not ignoring the real world of corporate objectives and the things that all of us have to do day to day to get paid. But we are going to throw this gauntlet down to start off the Q&A. We need to move to a business and design model where we don't just do a bit less bad, but we do more good. We want you to suggest how, in lighting, we profitably solve problems of people and planet and not profit from causing them. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Dave Mooney. We've completed the slide presentations, and we listened to everybody's questions. David.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start with a couple of debate-forming questions from me, and then I'll throw it open to the floor. We had one question so far, and I would ask people to try and put a few more questions in the chat as I give these first 3 questions. So I asked the panel, how do you think the circular economy should be regulated? By mutual agreement between manufacturers or by legislation? Bob.
There is already legislation coming. The EU, which is still driving our regulation, and the single lighting regulation is going to be requesting us to have the ability to swap out drivers, swap out PCBs, and the what is known as the right to repair. So some of it's coming. The government is already driving towards doubling resource efficiency by the year 2050. So you can see where it's going to go. Just as the fact that we had the energy and use regulations, which drove the requirement for energy efficiency, the same things are going to come for a circular economy. We then say it's sort of legislated by the manufacturers. Well, it's not just the manufacturers. This is a systems approach. There'll be the platforms required to pick up and reuse. There might be, new organisations we haven't heard of to stock and reuse and rebuild light fittings. And of course, those who are independent light designers and engineers and consultants, they also have a role to play. So it's mixed. We can see the clear direction of travel in terms of broad brush legislation, but you could also suggest that maybe some of the better manufacturers may be well in advance of that. I think you should ask the question of Tim and Roger.
May I make a comment?
Yeah, Roger,
I think,
of course.
Sorry, should I waited for permission? I think a minimum starting point should be, let's say, a framework or grid of criteria which to form a basis. So different manufacturers' statements, at least they're done in a common way, so lighting designers can compare one with another in such a common grid.
Tim, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's about, I guess there's two things. There's client motivations and what their drivers and what their strivers and what their values are around sustainability and delivering around that. I think there is an element though of also looking at, sorry, I've got some questions pinging in here, sorry. I think there's an element as well around the legislation. I think is important, or the guidance around it. I take the example of when we've been talking to people around the cradle or circular approaches, is one of the first questions we get is it part of BREEAM? And at the moment it isn't, or certainly within the UK. And I think sometimes people need the nudge to to try and consider this as an approach. And obviously there is the net carbon or zero carbon and ECAs, EPDs. But is there something around the encouragement for people to consider the circular economy in driving projects and products through into the market or into the actual built environments?
Okay, Kristina, do you have anything to add?
I think something that Roger said there, about basically manufacturers having like a kind of a statement or a mission statement or something like that just kind of shows their position about the circular economy and where their products fit into that, and either accreditation house essentially that perhaps you use, Roger, or Tim yourself, would fit into that method type statement. I think that something that Bob and I had perhaps touched on was just perhaps how this kind of say the word infrastructure, but the system for all of this, it doesn't exist yet, and which is fair enough because we really are as an industry at the beginning of this journey. So how different business models will facilitate that doesn't quite, again, like I say, exist at the moment. But there was something that the Carbon Trust used to do quite a few years ago, and I know they just finished it recently, which is their enhanced capital allowance, which kind of gave more financial incentive, I suppose. So I guess, and then what that did was that did kind of lay down an element of kind of standards, I suppose, so you could follow that. So it wasn't like legislation as such, but nonetheless it did kind of point you in the direction if you wanted to achieve an economic goal from this. So I don't think it exists currently, but it will do for sure.
Okay, turning more to a manufacturer question, what role do you think Zagar has within the circular economy? Roger?
I think it has a strong role to play, and You might remember I showed a slide with one of the slides. It had a section through an extrusion, which could be used for a pendant or a track spot or anything. That's not the important bit. And you might have noticed a number of holes in it, different fixing centers. So what we consciously did is to cover the different Zagar fixing centers to make the fixture upgradable if a different module is wanted. Let's say the lit space undergoes a change of use and you want a different module type, as long as it's got Zagar compliant fixing centers, then it's ready to go. So I think very important.
Okay, Tim.
Yeah, I think we'd possibly take a slightly different view from that, Roger. In that, I think with the performance of LED technology today and the reliability of the LED boards, I think there's some people see Zagar as potentially restricting or limiting innovation around product design and innovation, and I think and does upgradability fit into that? I think the emphasis should be more around us as suppliers or manufacturers in ensuring that our board designs are kept to a minimum, and we simplify that, but also that we ensure that we can provide the components or elements throughout the life of the product going forward. I think that's probably more the approach that we do. We have a responsibility as a manufacturer to support that product throughout its life and provide the relevant components as appropriate.
I think there's several issues. Zagar's a cracking idea. Tim's solution is also sensible to how long are you going to guarantee the availability of spare parts. But what you also underneath, and this is where every time you pick up any stone in circular economy, you find an awful lot of life going on underneath, and it's complicated. So if we start having replaceable light sources, then how do you deal with the thermal heat transfer from the PCB to the body to the heatsink? It's super critical to high-powered LEDs, especially if they're fairly densely clustered, to get the watts per meter Kelvin to get that heat away. If you suddenly have easily plug-and-play light sources, well, what's the thermal junction between the light source, the body? It's got to be understood. Otherwise, you might be introducing worse problems than you had to begin with. That's got to be considered. Spare parts, all sorts of things.
Okay, the last question, I'm going to leave Kristina out of the answer for this one. Sorry about that. What impact do you think the circular economy will have on the overall carbon footprint of lighting? Bob.
Yeah, interesting. When we first talk about circular economy, everybody talks about carbon, and then everybody talks about recycling, and then we keep saying, it's not that. Except it also is. Because if we're saving resource and we're keeping things at their highest usefulness level, that's saving carbon. So the amount of energy required to smelt aluminium from raw bauxite takes a lot of energy. If we keep the aluminium as aluminium, great. If we keep the aluminium as a light fitting, even better. So there's huge carbon savings to be made there. But we're trying to look at the whole reuse resource profile. If we stop shipping things around the world and they're staying in life for longer use, then we cut shipping emissions, which is PM10s as well as carbon. But what if the other way? What if we now suddenly introduce a fleet of white vans running around trying to pick fittings up and mend them? Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? So you've got to look at the whole profile of everything you do within your ecosystem.
Okay, Kristina?
Yeah, I think Bob's right. I mean, I think we potentially could end up creating other problems. I mean, I was speaking to somebody from Signify only last week, and he was telling me about the complexity of being able to track that carbon footprint of products. And he started talking about kind of like if you were shipping, and then how like weather and everything, it started to get completely crazy in some ways. But you know, each of the factors that are involved in that is incredible. So we're at the beginning of a journey, right?
I don't know whether it's urban myth, but somebody suggested in one of our team meetings that Walker's Crisps tried to work out, you know, the carbon footprint of a packet of crisps.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it got
no,
so
that's
complicated they gave up after about 6 months. That was a packet of crisps.
It was salt and vinegar, particularly. I think that it was.
Can't even work it out with a packet of salt and vinegar crisps in a plastic pack. You know, Tim's laughing. You know, and he's got his hand up. You know, you just think of, you know, of a large company. You could be a large company trying to do it, and Tim's going to take over from me. But you also think of a small company with a limited staff. How on earth do they do this? There's an awful lot of small manufacturers and suppliers out there. Tim.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, thank you, Bob. I think I wasn't going to necessarily touch specifically on what I know on Circa for us, although I do believe that Circa is part of that. But I think there was something published by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation where they were looking at you know, how to get to net zero. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's something like the circular shift. And I think if I read that right, they were saying that if you go to zero carbon and go to net, you know, you use renewables everywhere, that only takes us within the built environment to something like 55% of the, you know, the way to zero net carbon, because actually the manufacture of products and items, you know, is still a huge consumer of greenhouse gases. And I think so the circular economy element of that will help to drive that down further. Now, whether lighting is as big a consumer as concrete, I guess, is open to debate, but I think it's still part of the overall message about driving through that that lower carbon footprint and goal that we all strive and have to deliver.
Okay, Roger.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to this discussion. I know the starting point is the let's say certain fact that the a bigger part of the environmental footprint is in the usage phase, but for me it's all connected. If you have designed a fixture with circular economy principles, let's say at a certain point down the line, 10 years or something, if you can replace the LED module with one 50% more efficient, then you're saving energy. So I see the circular economy and the in-use energy consumption being very much interlinked. Secondly, to pick up on something Bob said before, and actually it's all connected. You could design a luminaire with hardly any aluminium in, and it works perfectly because there's less embodied carbon, but then the heat sinking is worse, and the efficacy of a LED would go down. It's all connected. And then also thinking that there's ample heat sinking, that if you do change the module, then you shouldn't be in trouble with heat dissipation. And just not to leave it hanging in the air, if you do change modules, it should be done by professionals, because like Bob said, if it's not a good thermal contact, then there could even be a safety issue, let alone energy consumption.
Okay, that's great, guys. Oh, sorry, Kristina.
Yeah, I just want to make another point, because I mean, I think something that's kind of I say working in parallel and perhaps simultaneously, definitely simultaneously, is you know, the net zero by 2050, which although it feels like that's ages away, 2000 was only 20 years ago, and it feels like yesterday. But the idea of what net zero actually means, if we're to drill down into that, and we talk about our lighting industry and we're talking about the circular economy for that, but net zero means looking at manufacturers, for example, not only about their products, but how they operate. And this is something that the checklist concept essentially would look to address, would be to say, hey, manufacturer, you know, can you, like Roger had said earlier, you know, about having this kind of a philosophy or mission statement of some sort, but nonetheless, you know, you need to be practicing what you're preaching, and you know, and if that means that your factory is powered by hydropower or something like that, you know, that's what net zero is. You know, from the government, that's what that means. So it's not just about products or shipping or anything like that, it's operation.
Just to come back on for all the panel, a couple of thoughts that I've had. I don't know if these figures are 100% up to date, but the world population is 17 billion people. 1 billion of those people use kerosene to light their their buildings and their homes. Of that, kerosene is 70% of the total carbon that lighting actually consumes. And those are figures that have come from the World Energy Group. Anyway, I'm now going to throw it out to go through some of the questions. I see there are some very interesting questions that have now come up. So starting off with a question from Rob Redfern. Does the checklist include something about future adaptability, upgrade, instead of the future we need, removal and replacement? Bob.
And I have to say that yes. And I have to say again, this is draft. We're learning. We've got a team building this. Yes, if we can, we're going to try to identify. Kristina was, she was talking about, the no evidence, the +1, +2, +3, +4. If we can start to give them, ideas of what you'd need to incorporate to achieve those at each criteria for each section, then great. So repair, replaceability, it's got to be in there. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I think I'm only going to ask one member of the panel for each of the questions. Otherwise, we'll be on for another half hour.
David, I think we've it's an hour and a half session. We've got to 1:30, I think.
Have we got to 1:30? Oh, right. Okay. Well, let's go on. Next question.
Unless you need to get down the pub personally, David, but
no, I do not.
We're quite happy to chat.
I'm just smelling my dinner roasting away in the oven. Anyway, standardized. This is from Hakeem. Standardization of general parts is a good start to help extend light fitting lifespan. I think we've covered that a bit with Zagar and how we do that. But do we think that we should be going for, rather than the self-tapping screw, a bolt and a nut or something like that? Is it that kind of level of things about thinking how we actually address the componentry of manufacturing? Roger?
I think, yes, that makes sense. I think another point that Tim and I made is localization of components using local anodizers or paint shops, keeping records of every component, of every luminaire you've made. So however long in the future, you can always guarantee to be able to in-house or in your local, let's say, ecosphere, be able to replace components.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think there's a tension. Sorry, Tim, go ahead. You go first.
No, I was going to agree with Roger. I think it's about transparency of the parts and components and access to those throughout the life. It's a commitment from us, I guess, as lighting manufacturers to ensure that you can get hold of those elements. And as Roger said, local supply chain support, the through life elements of what our products are. We can't just ship them out the gate and not take responsibility going forward. We have to create the partnerships and the supports throughout the life to ensure that they get the most out of those products and they're doing what they should do.
And I think there's a healthy tension in all this. If you remember, where it used to be the case where you could only get your car serviced at the main dealer, and they used to charge you royally for it. They probably still do. But then the EU stepped in and said that you could have independent dealers. At the same time, you could also understand Tim wants to capture his clients for a long-term partnership. So he wants his components to go into a fitting. It could be Tim and Roger and other companies on the circular economy route. They've got real innovation going into maybe the LEDs or the optics, etc., etc. So we need to understand what doesn't stifle innovation, what enables. There's levels of this to understand, and there's not only one answer. There's multiple solutions.
One other thing I'd add to all of what you've said really is that part of the checklist is obviously the circular economy Factfile that we're writing, and we have incorporated elements that do consider manufacturers, lighting designers, but also wholesalers, for example. So that kind of partnership between manufacturers and suppliers of spare parts, that will still exist. In fact, it will probably thrive more than it does currently. If you remember what it was like to just buy a lamp versus like the whole luminaire. So that kind of maintainability business structure will be revived, I think. I think that's positive.
But I'm going to wade in and maybe stir up a hornet's nest. If you're just sitting in a tin shed somewhere buying a 40-foot container load of product, you don't really know what it is from somewhere on the other side of the world, and just shipping it out the door at lowest possible price, you probably don't know what's in it, and therefore you probably don't know how to repair it.
Which actually leads me on to a question from past President Jim Shrove. How do we as an industry make sure the race to the bottom mentality spoken about by James Judith Hackett doesn't impinge on the specification of these products? I think that's a challenge to all of us, but I'll start with Roger.
I think the question is a good one. I see the circular economy as it's the right thing to do. You know, but on top of that, on top of thinking of sustainability, the Earth's resources, etc., I also see it as a commercial advantage, and compared to manufacturers that don't use any of these circular economy principles. So I think just treading this path is already maybe a route out of this race to the bottom. The second point I would make is it has to be done in, there has to be partnerships in the industry. Can you imagine if Stone Lighting want to, be involved with refurbing luminaires instead of buying new, refurb what you've already got? What can be more sustainable than that? But then there must be contractors involved, so you have to work with the contractor. The end user has to be aware of what's happening and plan it in, and probably I also see lighting designer involvement, maybe doing a survey of an installation that he designed 10 years ago. Okay, here's the 10-year MOT, if you like. This is what I would recommend. So I see it as connecting partnerships, making this work.
Okay, Kristina, have you anything to add?
I just want to kind of make sure that, and to highlight in some ways that, the circular economy, be that just this document, Factfile or the checklist, none of that in any way supersedes the need for safety, for electrical safety or anything like that. So that will always remain like the top agenda. So like you mentioned, the Dame Hackett report, we would never want to be responsible in any way for any kind of horrible things like that. So like I say, top agenda is always safety.
Tim?
I think it's about creating the specification, the value that it can bring for the clients and for the end user. I think we all have that challenge around the race to the bottom, or the cost saving and the value engineering that happens. And I think this does add, I think, as Roger mentioned, that the commercial, and I think Bob did as well, this commercial opportunity for people to add real value. And I think it's talking to clients about what this can do for them. And I know we've had conversations with several clients around what the opportunity about delivering circular solutions can do, about the opportunity to upgrade and replace, and how the financial benefits that can bring them longer down the line, if they can think slightly beyond that initial stage of capital, capex, and think about the operating opex, and then the future upgrade and potential benefits that LED or controls can bring down the line, and having a platform that enables that to happen. I think it's just a longer term approach.
Okay.
Can I just chip in there?
Yes, go on.
Well, I think there's two things on the race to the bottom. One is that very few of the large property developers would be building anything but green buildings because it has a commercial advantage for them. And they're going to be calling for circular economy. But let's look at all the changes wrought on us by COVID. So we know that offices will change, spaces will change, retailers will change. So we go the old way and do a Cat A fit out, say, with unchangeable light fittings. Well, That's not flexible. If you put in something which is modular, we can change the optics, change its performance, change its function, just like Tim and Roger have been talking about, and other manufacturers. And in terms of the race to the bottom, this is in a way one of the key functions of the assessment method. So we can compare and contrast between product offerings from manufacturers. We can take informed choices and then defend that through the equal and approved process. So when somebody says, no, we want the cheap one, you can then say, just like you said before, but it's the wrong glare, wrong lumens, wrong performance, you can then say, wrong circular economy rating.
Okay.
It defends.
Right, moving on to a question from Rob Redfern. It would be interesting to understand the cost comparison of reuse / upgrade versus replacement. Cost, time, quality would come to mind, and also disruption. What is the end user would certainly, this is what the end user would certainly want to consider. Bob? Oh, sorry, who's that?
Sorry, can I come back on that?
Tim?
So yes, on the project we worked on, we worked with the FN team on site, and in delivering this sustainable circular approach. Regarding, obviously we manage the time, we manage the process with them by taking items off site back to our factory. We upgrade the product, took them back to site, and manage that in a controlled way, as you would, I guess, with any refurbishment project. Regarding the cost, it certainly had a benefit for them on the project. It was more cost effective for them to do that than it was to upgrade and deliver new lighting solutions or new products into the scheme. But I think also important what we did around quality, obviously, regarding the luminaire quality, absolutely, we went through this exactly same process with any new product around testing and compliance and meeting the standards requirements around there. But also from a lighting point of view as well, we made sure that the lighting solution that went back in was as good or better than the existing lighting solution was today. So again, we didn't compromise on the existing environment that they had around that as well. And I think that's important with any refurb, any job. It's about using the right manufacturer, the right people to ensure that the compromise on the space and the environment isn't done for just purely for a circular point of view. It has to be balanced with everything that that obviously the guys on the call today would consider important in delivering a lighting solution.
Roger, I was interested with your Hereford Cathedral job. Who do you think was the driving force that started that unusual project there? Was it the client?
God.
First of all, I don't know 100%. I wasn't involved at the beginning, but I suspect it was a conversation between the client and the lighting designer involved, which was the comment I made that I definitely see a role for lighting designers here doing surveys and giving advice to their clients. By the way, can I also make a comment on the last discussion? I totally agree with Tim and Bob, and of course, if you're refurbing an installation, it's got to make sense for the client, cost-wise, not just ecologically speaking. And I think the only exceptions are if you're upgrading. So let's say, for example, you have an installation of halogen luminaires, and they're good ones, and they can. If you swap out the transformer and put in a constant current driver, take out the MR16 lamp holder and put in a LED module. In that instance, yes, the refurb would cost more than a new halogen luminaire, but you're getting a much better, much more energy efficient, more functionalities solution. So I think it's you must look at it case by case.
Okay.
And I was talking to Peter Fordham, head of lighting and electrical at Sainsbury's the other week, and he was saying that they were choosing between some fittings recently. And somebody said, "Well, you buy the cheap fitting." He said, "Yeah, but we're going to have to replace those in 2, 3, 4 times in the life of the high quality fitting. That's incredibly expensive to do." And then they were saying that, well, We used to have the fitting bodies in a store for a long time where we could just replace the lamps. We maintained things. So the idea of maybe an LED fitting with limited life that you're going to go and completely throw it away after 10 years is not what we used to do. Now, they have strong environmental policies. You can see them on their at head office and on their main website. That's coming through into circular economy. All he's saying, though, is that you have to prove it. They are, like every client, they want to know the brass tacks. They want to know the money. They're not just going to do something on an eco whim. Prove it, but and explain it with a business case. And that's fair comment.
Okay. To open up the next question, this is from Mark Riddler. Tim, cradle to cradle looks a good scheme. How did you find the assessment process, and which others did you consider?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thanks for the question. Yeah, so how do we find the assessment process? I wasn't personally involved with it, but I know speaking to people in the business, it wasn't easy. It took time and it took money to go through, but I think it was a great eye opener for us. We had to work with our supply chain. They didn't all fully understand what we were trying to do and trying to deliver, and we didn't end up at the end of it with friends with everybody. I think it's fair to say, although they are understanding what we've done and trying to understand better now what we did to try and support us going forward. But it was harder, but it was rewarding. I think it's put us in a great place to understand our business and understand our product development going forward. Did we consider other elements? We not necessarily around cradle or circular cradle to cradle, like for example the one that Roger mentioned, the accreditation process. But what we did have a bit of a discussion with the clients on this project around the the LCA EPD, life cycle analysis, environmental product declarations, whether we should take that route or take the cradle to cradle route. And I think we took the cradle to cradle route because the circular approach, I think, as alluded to from everybody today, is about trying to deliver a positive impact on what we're doing. And I think just providing a life cycle analysis on a product doesn't necessarily mean that it makes the product circular or environmentally friendly necessarily. It just tells you what the impact of that product is. Okay, it does maybe give you some guidance what you need to do next with that product, but it doesn't challenge you necessarily on what that product can do. And that's why we quite liked the cradle to cradle approach, because it challenged, again, not just the products and materials, but also challenged us as a business in how we how we manufacture our products and how we design our products. And it exposed some stuff for us that we have to try and manage and control and deliver. But it's for the right reasons, and it's for the right thing for the business and for the environment and for we think for our clients as well going forward.
Okay, Roger.
Well, I can't comment on cradle to cradle. It looks very interesting, and I do see some parallels with the B Corp or B Corporation, which is the route that Stone Lighting have gone down. It's a very kind of exhaustive process, about 200 questions, but therefore I like it. I like the thoroughness. It goes into worker impact, community impact, environmental impact, governance impact, customer impact. And yeah, this I like. It's if I'm quoting correctly from their handbook, what they want to do is redefine success in a business so that one day all companies will compete not just to be the best in the world, but the best for the world. That I found very impressive, very impressive. There's more than profit and loss sheets involved here.
Okay, Kristina, do you have anything you would like to add to this at all?
I think in some ways that question was sort of targeted to the manufacturers, wasn't it? And
yes, okay.
Yeah,
I think
as an ex-manufacturer.
Me as an ex-manufacturer. Oh, right, Bob.
With a head office powered entirely on hot air, yes. Mark's comment is extremely good, and we probably need to be aware of all the possible accreditations, and we probably need to list them. Where we were coming in with the assessment method is like a level down. We are not. No, we're doing this in our spare time as volunteers for the society. I'm sure if one of those people want to reach out to me, I'd love to do it full time, but hey, they haven't yet. So we need to list those assessment methods. we don't know whether there's one better than the other and where they all are. But they're a really useful indicator that a manufacturer has thought very hard about this to deliver the right things right.
I just come back on that. I think with Roger would agree. I think the important thing about these assessment processes and what they're doing is it's about transparency. It's about openness, and that's very much part of what Circular is all about. It's about us, warts and all, I guess, what we're doing well, what we're doing badly, and then that's the only way that we can improve, and the way that we can it's tangible and it's value that people can understand what we're doing, and then challenge us and challenge people. But at least it's against the benchmarks, not just a manufacturer saying, we're green, we use recycled materials, or we're green or not. It gives some weight behind it, I think, and that's why we liked it.
Okay, we have a question here from one of our engineers here in Atkins, Martin Tedger, and he has two questions. I'm going to start with one. How would we address the design if a client wants flexibility to change the aesthetics of the building? Again, I think this is quite a common thing now, that we actually need to think not only of the building in its first use, but also maybe subsequent uses in the future. Tim?
Yeah, so I think, I think with this removable cartridge element, I think that hopefully that provides potentially the opportunity. Someone's going to still want to still keep the ceiling in place. The chance they're probably going to go for a modular ceiling grid. I appreciate not all projects go down that route. But the potential is that the client can, hopefully with innovation around lighting technology, controls, optics, they could refresh or change the product based on that same platform around the products and what we put into the space. But I think the important thing, and so I probably tapped a little bit into that second question that I think I can see that Martin's asked, which is, by having the transparency of information and data and being able to try and understand how the products perform through life, there's a potential that product can be used elsewhere as a second life or a third life, not necessarily for that client, but for somebody else. And I think that's what's quite exciting about the cradle to cradle and what can happen with delivering products into markets. But again, it relies on having the right information so someone knows how long that product's been burning for, so they can understand that through life performance.
Roger, do you have anything to add?
I think I touched upon this before. If we make the luminaire design flexible enough that components can easily be changed, I don't just mean change these components if something has failed, or even for going for more energy efficient ones, but the light technical specification can be changed if you want to move the fixtures to a different space, or the space itself has a different usage. I guess the most extreme example would be in museums or galleries, where you get constantly changing exhibitions, each with their own lighting requirements.
Okay, Bob, anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's, we know spaces are going to change in function. We know all the different buildings we have to use, and then, and the lifetime of the internals of a building and its usage. Now companies are going through ever state of change. But I think the technological one is a very key point. Let's remember back to Gen 1 LED. Do you remember all those cold, white, fairly dim LEDs? Now, how many members of the public now think that LED equals that sort of horrible blue-white, alien autopsy white? It wasn't anything to do with it being good. It was to do with it being cheap and being. Now we can now deliver a far better quality of light for the cost. So the idea of having a upgrade of the fitting is a great thing to do. Aesthetics. Why does circular economy on the aesthetics of the fitting? That shouldn't change it. We can still build a great and beautiful fitting. It could be taken apart with a screwdriver. No, this is an additional thing we need to be thinking about, and it's good.
I mean, this is for me where good product design has become a real asset to manufacturers there, that they design something that becomes not only a light fitting, but also an icon. And if that icon is designed in the right way, it can have a long life, much longer than the active components in the thing in there. And this would start. We might see some of our luminaires actually becoming parts things that are traded on the Antiques Roadshow in the future. I mean, that
I think
is
I
the
think you
ultimate.
then get to Anglepoise lights, and I believe Anglepoise lamps you can still get spare parts for.
Mm. Do you want to say something? About 15 years ago, when I was at university, I wanted to write my dissertation and title it "Can Designers Save the World?" And I was encouraged not to write that, and I didn't. In the end, I wrote something about sustainability and product design. But I genuinely think that it is in the core of the designers, product designers, and all of us really. We all play a part in it. Whether like you say we're contractors or whoever. Now, maybe saving the world is perhaps a bit, whoa. But yeah, I think we can. We make a massive impact positively and negatively. So I think, everything that we are doing and working towards, I think we can.
Okay. The next question is from Henry Meller. Do you think the CE innovation can aspire to achieving a level of confidence where buying refurbished and repairable products is seen to be better than buying new as a choice for not using new resources? That's probably not really one for our two manufacturing colleagues. Let's start with Kristina.
Well, I mean, I think this is something again, we've maybe touched on a little bit, that some of these business models don't quite exist yet, and I think, if we were to maybe look at something like light as a service, for example, I know Signify and Zoomtable, that's something that they've explored. I don't know how successful those models for business have been, but nonetheless, that is about, putting lighting systems into use and then bringing them back at certain times. I mean, yeah, like I say, these business models that I think will come around, but it's still early days.
Lisa Lamb.
I think Tim alluded to quite a few of the things. So fine, if we're going to reuse a fitting, we need to understand lots of things. Warranty. Did the warranty just go to the first person who just purchased it? How long is it going to last for? We need to understand CE marking and what's happening there. We need to understand how many burning hours. So we need to understand the photometry. So you've got a fighting idea what it's doing. Let's face it. Let's go to a second-hand car analogy. You go to a second-hand car lot, you can see the mileage on the car, you've got a fighting idea what that car does. You can probably pull up the manufacturer's specifications and see what it delivers. It might even achieve what it says in terms of miles per gallon if you're still back on fossil fuels. Probably won't. Yet, if you've got two 600 by 600 panels from, maybe no-name manufacturers sitting in a warehouse to be reused into another project, do we know what they do? Do you know which one the good one was and which the poor one was? Do we know how long they've been burning? How much life? These are all parts of the ecosystem, the reverse logistics, which we might need to understand and deliver. It just hasn't been done yet.
No, I think the model is changing rapidly, and we need to all think about our positions in these new business models. So
we're coming up to half past.
Indeed.
May I
was going to
one point?
Yes, I can.
I see a parallel with Patagonia and clothing. Not that I'm an expert in clothing, but I do. It even registered with me. Their advertising, don't buy new, repair what you've already got, and the fact that they would do kind of road shows in certain towns, give us your shorts or t-shirts and we will repair them, and it becomes the norm. I think the confidence will come and it will become the norm.
Yeah, I think I was just going to say this. So I was going to say a similar thing, Roger. I know I was reading something last week about, there is still a perception maybe around anything secondhand being worse than new, and I think that's changing, and that's just not just around lighting, just in general. And I think that's going to be a mindset change and that will then drive through. That it's about what people want and what people expect and the aspirations for people who are working for these companies and who are working in these spaces. They will pick decisions around who they work for, where they go, based on some of these more. The sustainable approach, the circular approach to how we're delivering environmental considerations, and I think that will change the wider picture, and then lighting will form a natural part of that, I think.
And if we are able to enable and produce this assessment method, then level 4 is regenerative. And taking Roger's idea of Patagonia, well, Rohan asks you to give your old Rohan garments back, and they then gift them out to things, places like field centres and schools, to enable people to get into the great outdoors. You then get a 15% discount off your next purchase.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
they're regenerating people's lives.
Just to kind of extend what you're saying there, Bob. I mean, I think it was +4 outstanding kind of criteria or category that we looked at. Perhaps it does include things that like social responsibility and stuff like that. So it goes way beyond potentially, and like how manufacturers, designers, everybody in that system, in that circle, dare I say, acts and responds. Like I say.